GL here. Today I'm going to be cooking chili kebab koobideh. When I was a much younger man, I lived in the Iranian community for about 8 months, living there, working there, eating there, and becoming pretty well acquainted with Iranian community. I found that their food preparation, their food choices were really, really good. Very healthy, very flavorful, and I literally fell in love with chili kebab koobideh. It's a kebab made with ground meat, basically beef, sometimes with lamb, very nicely spiced, cooked on a skewer, and served with rice, onions, tomatoes, which also were grilled or over wood flames inside the bill. The recipe I'm using today I got off the internet. From looking at it and reviewing it, I believe it is very close to what I experienced out in California. Living here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, we don't have any Iranian restaurants. So there's no place here for me to go to enjoy this traditional dish. So I decided I would do an internet search, see if I could find a recipe. Actually, I found several, and chose the one that I felt most closely represented what I had experienced. This video is going to be multi-part. It's going to begin with the list of ingredients, preparation of the meat, be in the video one, along with instructions on how to prepare it for chilling and allowing the ingredients to build together. The second video will consist of how to apply the meat to the skewers, how to prepare the grill for cooking, and how to grill the meat, the onions, and the tomatoes that are served with the dish. The next video will address the preparation of Persian rice. And this is a very unique way to prepare rice. It produces some of the best rice I've ever eaten in my life. And we'll be going through that process. Then the final clip that will be part of this video will be the actual plating of and presentation of the dish for service. And we'll have a taste test. Loretta and Norma will sit down with me to enjoy chili kebab koobideh. So that's where we're going. So stand by. Ground beef. This is 75-25. It really needs to be 70-30. I'll add a little bit of lard to it to increase that. Then we have a spice called sumac that you get from a Mideastern store. Salt, pepper. This is turmeric, and this is saffron. We will also be using 1 large or 2 small onions, grated very finely. The first step is to finely grate the onions. So I'm going to start using that portion right there of the colander and start grating my onions. Now, as you can see, those onions are not nearly as fine as they need to be. So I brought out the food processor, and I'm going to put my onions in there and really pulverize them. They need to be super fine. Now, as you can see, that is really chopped very fine. The next step is to eliminate the fluid from that container. I'm going to grab a coffee filter and load this onion into there. And we're going to take that and we're going to squeeze. It was supposedly just to squeeze the fluid out. However, that didn't work. Hold on. Folks, you really need a cheesecloth for this. And I know that, and I've been putting off buying one. But we got to correct that problem. So I'm going to use a tea towel. Dump all this mixture out. Get as much of it out of this container as possible, but you know, the bottom line is a piece of cheesecloth is cheap, and it is one of the more essential tools of your kitchen. And I know that, and I still haven't taken the time to acquire one. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to squeeze all this fluid that we can get out of those onions, and there's a lot. If you squeeze too hard, you actually squeeze the onion through the cheesecloth, through your cloth, so be careful. You want to preserve as much of the onion as you can, because that's a major ingredient in this dish. So let's see what I've been able to retain. Not perfect, but nothing is. So we just do what we can do with what we got at hand. And that's the basis of cooking anyhow. You know, you don't get upset about things not going exactly the way you planned them, the way you wanted them to go. You just work through whatever your situation. After we got married, Norma wanted to cook a multi-layer cake. Cooked that multi-layer cake, and it flopped. It came all apart. And in trying to get the cake out of the pans, we ruined it. Well, we had guests coming that evening. Norma was all upset about not being able to have the dessert that she wanted and everything, so I simply took the cake pan over to the garbage disposal and dumped the whole thing. And we started all over from scratch. And you know, the second time was great. Produced a wonderful dessert. She was happy, she felt thrilled. And, you know, that's part of cooking. Okay, the next step is to add our ground beef. So I'm going to take the ground beef and I'm going to put that right in there. We're going to dump that for a minute. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to get a teaspoon. We're going to take about a half teaspoon of sumac. Sumac is a tree bark that has a flavor of onion and put about a half teaspoon to a teaspoon of turmeric, some salt, pepper, and we're going to combine those ingredients. And just working it like this is probably the best way to do this. Now, I'm not done with this yet, but on fat content. Since it's a little light on fat content, I'm going to take about a tablespoon of just margarine pork fat that you would normally use to bake a pie crust. So we'll put that in there. Now we'll go back to mixing. Make sure that that fat is broken up and mixed thoroughly with the meat. Just mix and mix and mix and make sure those spices are well blended through, the fat's well blended through, and you know, with any recipe, feel free to make some changes. Just kind of keep track what you've done, and experiment. Cooking, after all, is nothing more than practical experimentation. You get things together and have a recipe, which is a general approach of how you prepare the dish, and you do it. If you make a mistake, you figure out what that mistake was, and next time you make the dish, you make those adjustments to it. And that's cooking. So what I'm going to do now is put some saran wrap over that and stick it in the refrigerator for a little more than at least 12 hours, but it's going to be in there for almost 24. That allows the seasoning to blend through the meat and produce a much better tasting dish. Part of this dish is a rice, which I can call Persian rice, and it is a little bit more time consuming to prepare. However, it is definitely one of the better rices that you could ever make. So Here we go. I'm going to be serving 3 people, so I'm starting off with 1 cup of long grain balsamic rice. Rice that I got at a Mideastern market. Our first step is to soak this rice for 1 hour. My rice is sitting on top of the stove, soaking in about 2 cups of water, and I will leave it there for 1 hour. The next step in this process is to thoroughly wash the rice. Wash the rice by continuing to stir it, stopping long enough for the rice to settle to the bottom, and then slowly drain the water off of it, and continue washing. Salt your water and bring it to a good boil for about 7 minutes. While this rice comes to a boil and boils for 7 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and put the kebab meat on the skewers. I'm using about a 1/4 pound of meat per skewer. And this may be too much, so I'm going to break it down into 1/8 of a pound. Roll it first into a ball. I guess I can use the whole half. Roll it first into a tight ball, and then roll it into a long piece of meat like this. And then take your skewer and position the meat over the skewer like that. Now work the meat, spreading it evenly out over the skewers. Now with your thumb, make dimples in the meat as you spread it out like such. That gives it the basic size and texture of the kebab. The rice is ready to steam at this point. I have punched holes into the top of the rice and added, in this case, olive oil to each one of those holes. I'm now going to cover it with a tea towel and bring it to a boil, bring it back to heat for steaming for about 10 minutes. The pan is covered with a lid with a tea towel under it and draped over the top. This allows the rice to steam, and the tea towel absorbs the steam and keeps it from going back into the rice. This will give you a nice dry rice that's perfect for this dish. The grill is preheated, and I have some wood on there to give it some smoke, and the kebabs will be placed on these supports to keep them up off the grill. As these are grilled, we have to turn them about every 30 seconds and keep them being turned to firm the meat all the way around. As you can see, the meat started to fall apart on my skewers. And it was only after this happened to me again for the second time that I realized the problem was I had not pressed the meat thin enough on the skewers so that the weight of the meat tend to pull off the skewers. But there's always a solution. The skewer that fell apart on me, I made into patties and set them up on the grill to finish cooking. The flavor in the meat will be such that it will be delicious. I'm grilling onions and tomatoes to serve with the meat and rice. When all this is done, we'll plate it, taste test it. Well, that's the final dish. Well, just to sum up my chili kebab experiment, as you saw in the video, there were a lot of things that went wrong in the process. Now, I could have scrapped the video and started all over again, and I guess that might have been a more professional way to do things. However, since cooking with Gio and Norma is to help young people understand what it is to cook and to learn to deal with mistakes that are made while you are cooking. And so it didn't make sense for me not to take advantage of that. I think I indicated at several points through the video things that were going wrong and that sort of thing. To bring this to a conclusion, I oversalted the water for the initial 7 minutes of pre-boil. And I did not drain the rice between the pre-boil and the steaming process. As a result, when I uncovered my rice at about 35 minutes rather than 40 minutes, which also was a mistake, my rice was a little moister than it should have been, and its flavor was more salty than it needed to be. The fact that the kebabs fell apart indicates you really have to be good at putting the meat on those skewers and pressing it down probably no more than 1/8 of a pound of mixture per skewer. And making sure that it's very thin so that as it heats, it doesn't have a tendency to sag and fall off the skewer. And if you turn the skewers every 30 seconds or so, that will also prevent the meat coming apart. The meat that I turned into basically hamburger patties was just as good as the meat on the skewers. It just did not have the visual appeal of the kebabs that I'm used to. All in all, the dinner was very good. Both Loretta and Norma felt that it was more than acceptable. They didn't complain. I was probably more critical of the dish because I'd had it so many times in Iranian restaurants. And so I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew that I had failed to accomplish that. But the bottom line was it was good, healthy food that everyone enjoyed. So I hope you will take this opportunity to play with these recipes, make your own mistakes, and just enjoy the food and the company. So have a great day, and as my good friend Baba says, have a better one tomorrow.